I'm a new hockey fan. I'm a noob. I love the interaction on Twitter. And so, Brandon, I want to first thank you for not laughing at my questions, as I am new to this. But let's jump out there. We asked about the Cam Talbot versus Fleury. When I called into the pregame show, and that was my question to you and Pat Micheletti. And then I heard you guys, when I got off the radio, have a little debate about who, at what point should Cam Talbot get a chance? Should he not? Well, the Blues did something that the Wild fans thought should happen at one point, which they put Bennington in. He did pretty well, 30 shots on goal. He had 28 saves. That's crazy. Where's the Wild? Couldn't really get it done. Spent a lot of time in the penalty box. I saw a 4-minuter out there. That's crazy. Don't really understand the 2 versus 5 versus 4, but whatever. But Brandon,
you'll learn.
What I'm learning. What do the Wild have to do though in Game 5? They don't want to go have a must-win game in Game 6 on their opponent's home ice because they have home ice advantage. Definitely got to push it to 7 games. What do the Wild have to do to pull out this Game 5?
Well, I find it kind of interesting how the fan base just ebbs and flows from each game. That before Game 4, I saw people on Twitter going, "Well, if they win this game and they have a 3-1 lead, should they pull the goalie and change the goalie?" It's like, let's not just assume this is going to be an easy victory. And I know the Blues had some defensemen that were out, and we can get to that later. But St. Louis is a really good team, and the Wild are a really good team. It's 2 good teams that, unfortunately, based off the way the NHL does their playoff format, unfortunately had to play each other right away in the first round. But, if you thought just after Game 3 this was going to be an easy series for the Minnesota Wild, you were wrong, and you were mistaken. And St. Louis is a really good team. Unfortunately, now for the Wild, they might get healthy moving into Game 5 on that blue line, and that'll make it even a tougher challenge. And I looked at the series beforehand. I thought, this is a coin flip series. Either team has equal a chance of winning, and thought it would go to Game 7, and I still think it's going to go to a Game 7. So in terms of what the Wild need to do in Game 5, probably need to be a little bit more physically engaged. St. Louis came after them early on and just thought that the work ethic and the battle level was there a little bit more. Once the Wild got down, they seemed to push as the game went along, but put themselves in too big of a hole. And in this series so far, whoever gets out to that early lead is holding on to it. So clearly the first goal apparently is important in this series.
Yeah, and I heard on the broadcast, in Game 3, I think it was 21 hits at one point to the Wild's 4. As far as just the Blues came out in Game 3 and it was a bloodbath early on. Yeah. The Wild weathered the storm and still found a way to win. Game 4, it looked like those hits started to mentally get to the Wild because you saw Wild players second guessing themselves, not really attacking, not taking some hits. Maybe they could have taken bad angles. And the Blues, they're like, look, we're down a couple defensemen, so let's just play backyard brawl and see what happens. And it worked. The Wild looked wore down, like you said. They looked a little timid or slow to start. How do the Wild etch up or amp up this intensity? I know they're going to have their home fans banging on the glass, to get some of these hits in. But how do they make sure they keep the physicality up so they don't get out physical?
I mean, it's just a want to, Ron. And I would think after losing Game 4 and all of a sudden it's a 3-game series. And as you mentioned earlier, Game 5 is pretty critical for the Wild, to be down 3-2 going into St. Louis after you just lost 2 in a row when you had a 2-1 series in the lead. That's not exactly a desirable situation for the Minnesota Wild. So I would expect, especially with the crowd, as you just mentioned at Xcel Center tomorrow night, that I don't think effort and intensity will be an issue. It's probably more so special teams, power play, and penalty kill, and goaltending and all that stuff that typically is. But you mentioned all the contact from St. Louis in Game 3. I expected that to die down a bit in Game 4, just because it didn't work for St. Louis, and the Wild realized after Game 3, we don't need to retaliate against these guys. We need to stay disciplined, stay out of the penalty box. So I think kind of best strategy for both teams moving forward is you're going to play physical. But you can't let that be your main thought that's in your brain, because it can kind of distract you from what else is going on. So as the series goes along, it's still going to be a physical series, but I think a lot of the extracurricular stuff that's after the whistle, that's going to go away here over the last 3 games, because the margin of error for both teams is pretty thin, and you don't want to be the guy that's making the mistake and costing your team.
Yeah, and so me and Audra Martin, she came on the show, and we've become friends over like Wild stuff now, and Twin stuff, and just State Fair stuff from like 2 years ago, I think, or three. I can't remember last time there was a State Fair, but maybe 3 years ago, we did a show at the State Fair together, and then we've stayed friends ever since. But her and I both love the Mighty Ducks. Me, because that's the only hockey I knew when I got to Minnesota, and so. The Mighty Ducks are kind of where I take it. So you look at the Bash brothers for the Mighty Ducks, and they put those guys in the game. Emilio Estevez, I think that's the right Estevez, puts those guys in the game just to beat people up. And you look at, and I was at the hockey, his
name's Gordon Bombay in the movie, Ron.
Gordon Bombay, yes.
Yeah.
So you're a fan as well of the Mighty Ducks. Yeah, I love it.
Well, who in Minnesota that was involved in hockey at our age did not love the Mighty Ducks? In fact, my kids were watching Mighty Ducks 3 this morning. Have
they started watching on Disney Plus though? Have they watched that series?
Oh yeah. We've already gone through the whole Game Changer series.
Okay. I've not watched it all. We watched it and then we kind of stopped because life started happening. But so when you think about that, so I've heard is Delorier, I think is the name, is the guy that kind of does a lot of that. What does he need to do to make sure, one, protect the goalie? And then make sure he's keeping that, as Nate Prosser put it, keep the house clean. Like, how is he going to make sure to keep those guys out of there, make sure those guys aren't, putting sticks, and not to make it sound weird, but I heard it on the broadcast, put sticks in the butt of the goalkeeper, if the puck's under there, just trying to jab at it.
That's a new one to me. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I think he said it looks like he hit him in the. I forgot what he was trying to say, but I did see it because it did skate back and it hit. I forgot who skated hit or something, or Dumba maybe. But I heard the guy kind of just sneak it in there. And for you guys, you watch it all the time, so that you didn't catch that. For me, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And he's like, yeah, it looks like he was digging in there to try to get the puck out. And so,
sure,
as a Delorier, that's pretty much a lot of his role. How does he stay engaged in that though? Because like it can be a lull back and forth, and then eventually you just got to snap into go mode and say, I got to get over there and clear this out.
Well, I mean, first off, for Delorier, he's not really playing a whole lot. He's on the fourth line, and they played 6 minutes yesterday in Game 4. Typically during the regular season, they're at 10, 11, 12 minutes. But the game is going to dictate how much ice time he gets, and you should know this, Ron, as a football guy. Like when you are down 2 touchdowns in the NFL, guess what? You're going to pass the ball more. You're not going to you're not going to run the ball. And in hockey, when you're down 2, which the Wild were, halfway through that game, they were down 3-1 to St. Louis. Well, you need to score goals. So if you're a guy like Delorier, who's not much of a goal scorer, like they're not going to see as much ice time. Not to mention if you have a game in which there's lots of special teams with power play and penalty kill, he's not going to be on the ice. Like he needs to be in a 5-on-5 where you're rolling the lines over. But he hasn't had a whole lot of impact on this series so far, Ron.
So that's good to know. So the point is then, so basically what you're saying is because the game I was at home, they were up. And so Delorier had more ice time because he was in there because of that.
Yeah. I mean, the more 5-on-5 you're playing, he'll play. Okay. And the more you are either tied or leading, he can play a defensive role where you're not afraid to get goals scored on you. But, if you're down a couple goals, he ain't going to, the odds of him scoring for you are very slim, and you want to get Kirill Kaprizov back on the ice. You want to get Kevin Fiala back on the ice. Like instead of rolling 4 lines, now you're going to roll 3 lines and get them more ice time to give yourselves a better chance to score. So, the score, that's why in all these games in this series, there have been goals scored early. The Wild's 2 victories, they scored. The first Game 3 they scored 10 minutes in, and then they had 3 by the end of the first period. Yep. That was Game 2. Game 3, in which they won in St. Louis, they scored 2 goals in the first 90 seconds. Like, that has an impact on the way the game is played. And then, from an X's and O's standpoint, it changes. If you're trailing, your defensemen are going to get more aggressive, and they're going to take more risks, which might mean they might give up more odd man rushes behind you because they're trying to play more up in the offense to give yourself a chance. So. That's why these early goals have really kind of changed all 4 games that we've seen played so far.
Yeah. So if you had to put your Dean Evison hat on, because I heard you say roll the 4 lines, 3 lines, and Kirill Kaprizov clearly is on the first line. I'm guessing that he's the best. If you're Dean Evison, though, how often are you going to give him the full 4 and let him get rest? Are you going to try to, like in this game, are you putting Kirill out there as much as possible to make sure he's getting full ice time?
Well, I mean, you always want Kirill Kaprizov out on the ice as much as you possibly can. One, he's by far your best player. I think he's
Right.
one of the leaders right now in the NHL in playoff goals, and he's kind of an Iron Man a little bit, Ron. Like his lungs, the kids like to say built different. Like his lungs are just built different, where he can go out there and play for a minute and a half and doesn't get tired as much as everyone else does. And you come from you got track and field in your family as well, so I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah.
There are guys like myself that if I go hard for 45 seconds on the ice, I'm gassed. My legs are gone. I need to get off. Whereas he just has something where he can stay out longer. So like you can double shift him and not worry about his legs or his lungs. And he's still a young guy too. He ain't 35, 36, 37 years old. So, you're seeing it, as I just mentioned with the fourth line and Delorier and Duhaime and Jost. Their minutes have declined or decreased as they've gone into the postseason here, and that's typically expected. But if the Wild get out to an early lead in Game 5 tomorrow night, then you are able to kind of roll your four lines a little bit more.